The offseason is here. We've been a week into it. I know it sucks. We want to be playing basketball, but that's okay. We've got your offseason calendar and your basic primer for everything ahead for the Orlando Magic this summer. Let's get to it. It's time for Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is April 17th, 2023. My name is Philip Rossman. I'm the expert and site editor over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com. Go follow me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, we're going to go over the basics of what to expect this summer with the draft and with free agency. We'll get into all that, plus do our playoff and lottery corner. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, we want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day, no matter when you listen to us, whether it's first thing in the morning, whether it's right when we upload. We truly appreciate you making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. Remember, there's a great Locked On podcast covering every single team in the NBA. Just search for Locked On and the team you're looking for, the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Today's podcast is also brought to you by PrizePicks. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match of up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. That's prizepicks.com, promo code LOCKEDON. Obviously, we're in the dead period. We're gonna do our season recap stuff. We're gonna talk about the season as a whole. We're gonna get to all that here in the coming weeks. We're kind of killing time a little bit until draft stuff happens, and we'll talk plenty about the draft when we get around the lottery. We're gonna talk about plenty of the prospects. We're going to take a little bit of a breath, but I think it's really important at this early stage of the offseason also to kind of set the table for what's going to come. We will talk plenty draft. I'm still doing my daily lottery spin. We're going to get to an interesting one here in our third segment. But let's just lay out the calendar and the dates that are ahead for the Orlando Magic. Let's go ahead and just lay out what's going on. Today is, in fact, a pretty big day on the Orlando Magic calendar. Today is Tiebreaker Monday. At 3 o'clock today on April 17th, the NBA is going to break its draft ties. And the way that draft ties are broken is they put the tied team's logo on a ping pong ball, they drop it in a drum, and they draw a random team, essentially. The Magic are not tied with anyone. They have the sixth best odds to win the lottery. We'll get to those odds here in a minute. But the Chicago Bulls are tied with the Oklahoma City Thunder. And since both the Bulls and the Thunder failed to escape the play-in tournament, they are both in this lottery tiebreaker. And typically, sometimes it doesn't matter much, or it's really just determining the order in case both teams miss the lottery or do not win the lottery. But in this case, there is a little bit of something on the line. The Bulls and Thunder tied for 11th in the lottery standings. If whoever wins this lottery is going to gain an extra lottery ball, an extra combination to win the NBA draft lottery. The winner of this lottery gets 18 ping pong ball, gets 18 number combinations, a 1.8% chance of winning the lottery, and pick 11th if they fail to jump into the top 4. If the Bulls lose this draw, or the loser of this draw will get 17 number combinations, 1.7% chance to win the lottery, and pick 12 if they fail to jump into the top 4. So this is a pretty big moment for a lot of teams as they, essentially this is the difference between 11 and 12 if you're the Orlando Magic. The potential to pick 11th is certainly there. The potential to pick 12th is certainly there. But there's a little tweak to this too. That extra number combination gives the winner an 8.5% chance of jumping into the top 4, compared to an 8% chance of jumping into the top 4. So the odds are still heavily that the Magic are going to get this pick from Chicago. It's still more than 90%, but there's an extra little 0.5% that they don't make it if the Bulls do end up winning this lottery. We'll cover it. We'll talk about it tomorrow. But it's a little thing, and that gets us to, and that's today. Today at 3 p.m. they're going to break the tie. They usually air it on NBA TV. If not, it'll be on the app if you're interested in the process. That's going to be the prelude to May 16th, when the Orlando Magic go into the lottery themselves, and we see where the Magic end up. The Magic finished 6th in the lottery standings. That gives them 90 number combinations. Now, if you're confused why I'm saying number combinations, I also give the percentage, 9% chance. The way the lottery works, and I'll do a full explainer again. I tend to do this every year. The way the lottery works is they assign every team a set of number combinations using a 4-digit combination of the numbers 1 through 14. So they drop 14 ping pong balls in the hopper, they draw 4 numbers out. There are 1,001 number combinations that exist from the numbers 1 through 14, 4 number combinations that exist with the numbers 1 through 14. So the top team gets 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 5, 1, 2, 3, 6, 1, 2, 3, 7, and so on. The Magic have 90 of these number combinations. That is the right they gain. So 9% chance of winning the NBA draft lottery, 37.2% chance of landing in the top 4. So those are the numbers that really matter. 90 number combinations. I haven't gone through and counted what our lucky numbers are yet. We'll do that later, but that's essentially what's going on here. So I tend to say number combinations because I want, I love Tankathon. I think they're great. It's not quite the random draw that they make it out to be. It very much is a process. It is very much a deal where, you're hanging your hat on all these numbers. And, I even think last year, the number that clinched the Magic getting to pick was the very last number. It was a low number on the last number drawn. It was almost very much a huge upset who got the number 1 pick last year. That's how this random draw works. So we're obviously very much looking forward to May 16th in the NBA draft lottery. Obviously a good day for the Orlando Magic last year. And of course the Bulls pick, the Magic have a more than 90% chance of gaining that pick. Now, the lottery, it's, for me, I like facts. I like certainty. It's hard for me to get too deep into draft coverage or too deep into saying this is who the Magic should be looking at. I've talked about some of these players on the show, but until we know where the Magic land that draft pick, it's hard to really plan this offseason. If they do get the number 1 pick, if they do draft Victor Wembanyama, that changes the entire calculus of the offseason. If they get 2 and end up with Scoot Henderson or Brandon Miller, that changes the entire calculus of the offseason. If they end up where they're supposed to at 6 or 7 and 12, well, that changes things too. That means that the Magic could maybe package those picks to move up, to move down, to get some veteran help. It could change a lot of things. And so we have a lot of dominoes that can fall. And as I'll explain in the next segment when we talk a little bit about free agency, the Magic have a lot of things that they can do. They have a lot of flexibility in what they're capable of doing this offseason and a lot of options in what they might ultimately plan and what they might ultimately do with their offseason to really improve this team. There are a lot of opportunities in front of this team, and it's going to be about picking the right one, making the right moves, and using your resources wisely. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what we're really talking about here, is the Magic have to use their resources wisely to take that really important next step for this team to get to the playoffs and become a consistent playoff contender. That's where we sit though right now. We're waiting on this lottery to happen to really kind of set the roadmap for this season. Of course, that's not the only thing we're waiting on. That's not the only big domino that has to fall. As big as that domino is, the Magic are going to preview exactly what they're going to do and how active they're going to be before free agency really begins. It's going to be a very busy and interesting draft night for sure as we get set for the lottery on May 16th and then, of course, the NBA draft taking place on June 22nd. A lot of big players. We'll talk more about those players a little later on with a fun but somewhat disappointing lottery spin we've got coming up later on in the show. We're going to talk about free agency and how the Magic are set up, plus the deadlines that could determine what the Magic ultimately do. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, a quick word from our friends at PrizePicks. The NBA playoffs are in full swing. It's been a fun postseason, a really unpredictable postseason. But if you think you have the picks to click, I don't know if that's a thing, I guess. You can make money on them off of PrizePicks. That also rhymes. PrizePicks is the best daily fantasy game going out there. It's not about being in these gigantic player pools. It's not about hoping beyond hope that you make your money back. No, PrizePicks is truly about your ability to predict what happens on the court and your ability to make money off those predictions. Here's how the game works. You pick 2 to 6 players, and if they go on to score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 25 times your money on any entry. There's no competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. And PrizePicks offers projections on any sport you watch, including NBA, MLB, NHL, PGA, and plenty more. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's really that easy. They offer safe and fast withdrawals. They're currently operational in more than 30 states, including here in Florida, as well as Canada. Download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports today. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match of up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter promo code LOCKEDON and sign up for an instant deposit match of up to $100. We want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic your first listen or part of your day every day. Everydayers. Tomorrow on the show, we're going to be talking a little bit more about what went right for the Orlando Magic this season. We're going to talk a little bit about their free throw shooting and how that began to transform the Orlando Magic's offense. We'll talk about that and plenty more on the show tomorrow. But let's dive back into our offseason calendar. Obviously the draft in late June is a big day. Obviously draft lottery day is a big day. Those are the days that are going to kind of set this team and its huge offseason in motion. It's going to set the course for the direction that this team ultimately goes. But there are obviously other big moments on the calendar. And there's one moment on the calendar I think is snuck a little bit under the radar. And we're going to dive into some numbers. So if you keep track with the math, I will do my best to not make this super math heavy or super numbers heavy. But the Magic are expected to be players in free agency. They're one of the few teams with cap room, and they're a team that potentially could have max cap room. But knowing what the Magic are going to do this summer, there are 2 days that really matter. First is obviously the draft. On draft night, teams are willing and hoping to make big moves. The Magic could be real players. With two lottery picks in this draft, or potentially 2 lottery picks in this draft, the Magic have a lot to offer teams. And while I think this draft class is very top-heavy with, one guy that's obviously heads and tails above everyone else and then 2 guys right below him, there's a lot of question marks about the guys in the middle. So I'm not sure how valuable those 2 picks would be in getting a potential star. I don't see them, making like a Drew Holiday trade with that the Sixers made, where they, were able to get 2 picks from New Orleans for a low-level all-star, like, not low-level, but for, at the time, a low-level all-star like Drew Holiday. I don't see the Magic being able to do that, but you never know. Someone might really value some of the players in this draft to say, hey, this is a draft where we can kind of reset ourselves a little bit, reset our talent, get rid of a veteran that we don't really need anymore for a couple of young players. And again, the Magic don't need a veteran that's going to take over the scene. They need a veteran that's going to kind of complement what this team does well and give this team a skill that it doesn't already have. So draft night, I think the Magic potentially could be very active on draft night. I think the Magic could potentially be making some very serious and big moves on draft night. So I would be keeping an eye on that, on that for sure. But after the draft, the next clue for when the Magic for what the Magic are going to do, it's going to come June 30th. That is option deadline day. And for the Magic, they have several players because Orlando's done such a great job. Has really done a great job just keeping a lot of flexibility. They have 14 players under contract entering this offseason, including 2 two-way players. But 14 players under contract, so that's already looking like a full roster. But only 8 of those are fully guaranteed. 6 of the contracts on the Magic's roster are at least partially guaranteed. The Magic have until June 29th to exercise team options on Michael Carter-Williams, Admiral Schofield, and Bol. And those are obviously kind of low-level amounts. Bol's making $2.2 million. Carter-Williams is at like $3.1, $3.2 million as a veteran player. Admiral Schofield is essentially like $1 million. So Those are really, really small amounts. Those are roster spaces. I'd expect Carter Williams and Schofield to be let go, to not have those options exercised. Bol, I'm on the fence with. It would not surprise me if Magic keep him. I think they probably see him as a potentially valuable trade asset. They have then until June 30th to guarantee Markelle Fultz and Gary Harris's contract. Now, both of those seem like slam dunks to get guaranteed. Essentially, if the Magic waive them before those dates, their contracts are only partially guaranteed. Again, I think it's pretty much a slam dunk that they'll both be guaranteed. But there's at least some thought that the Magic may not guarantee Gary Harris's contract. Now, here's the math that I promised. As things stand entering the offseason, thanks to our friends at Spotrac, or Spotrac, the Magic have $59.8 million guaranteed toward next season. The salary cap's expected to come down at $134 million. That number may go up or down depending on how the final books are tallied. But the Magic have $59.8 million already guaranteed. So they're already way under the cap. Now, we're going to take Jonathan Isaac's contract as guaranteed. That's about $17 million. And we're going to keep Markelle Fultz, a safe bet that they'll keep him. That adds $24.8 million to that total. Both Fultz and Isaac have some guarantees in their deals that are originally included in that 59.8, but we'll fully guarantee those. That brings us up to $84.6 million. So before we deal with Harris, before we deal with the 2 draft picks, the Magic have $84.6 million guaranteed to next season, or have committed to next season, essentially. And again, salary cap is expected to come in at $134. The 2 draft picks, if they land at number 6 and number 12, would add $10.5 million. So, including the draft picks, but not including Gary Harris, the Magic have $95.1 million on their cap sheet. Again, the salary cap is $134 million. That puts the Magic at roughly $38.9 million below the salary cap. If Orlando wants to spend a max contract on anyone, whether it's Kyrie Irving, whether it's Fred VanVleet, that feels like a big drop-off, but if the Magic want to give a max contract to someone, they can do it, but they're going to clue us into that they're doing it before July 1st. On June 30th, if they cut Gary Harris, that means they're going big fish hunting. That means they are going for the big fish. They're going for the big players on this free agency market. If the Magic keep Gary Harris, which again, I think feels pretty likely, he eats up $13 million of that. That puts the Magic in the neighborhood of $25.9 million of cap room. That is still a lot to work with, but it is not a max deal. You're not getting Fred VanVleet at $25.9 million. The Magic would still have plenty to go after, and some roster spots to use to go after some players. And again, they could even use that extra cap space in a trade to absorb more salary than they send out. That's the big thing that's on the line here. Again, July 1st is when free agency starts. By June 30th, we're going to have an idea of how active the Magic are going to be or what the Magic intend to do. A lot of us aren't expecting them to go for big fish. I listened to Jeff Weltman, and we'll talk a little bit more about this and go through these numbers again. And these are all estimates. They could go up or down by a little bit, but we'll talk a little bit more about this in later in the week or next week. It really does sound like, if you listen to Jeff Weltman's exit interview availability, that the Magic aren't looking to take a big bite at the apple. Now, if an opportunity comes around, if there's something that makes sense, I think they do it. But I don't think the Magic are going into this summer with the intention of, we got to make a splashy move. We got to make this huge move to propel us forward. I think the Magic, I think this front office really does believe in this group and knows that they can work a little bit on the edges, that they can work to add some players around the edges. They can work to add some players in key spots with key roles, key skills that will help this team get to that next level. And then they could spend next offseason when, yes, they have, next season's kind of their last offseason to really look at spending some money. They could spend next offseason or next trade deadline really focusing on adding that last piece that makes them a title contender in the early years of the Franz Wagner and Paolo Banchero extension. The other deadlines of free agency that are really important are in October. The Magic have, I believe the Magic can extend Markelle Fultz at any time, but the Magic have until, I believe it's October 30th to extend Cole Anthony. And Markelle Fultz and Cole Anthony are the two big extension questions for the Magic this offseason. We're going to dive into the pros and cons of doing both throughout the offseason because we are thinking very much about it, about whether the Magic do keep Cole Anthony and how much they want to eat into their 2024 cap room. because they could easily, again, like they did last year, spend low levels, low commitment on free agents, spin that cap room forward a year, try to play free agency again next year or play trades again next year when they're maybe a little bit more ready. They feel ready for it now. So it's definitely up in the air whether the Magic are going to be big spenders this offseason or whether they're going to kind of let things lie and roll it over for another year and see if this group can fully make that move next season. We're going to chat, though, next about the NBA playoffs, what we saw this weekend, and do our daily Tankathon spin. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, a quick word from our friends at Built Bar. Looking for a delicious snack but don't want all of the sugar and calories? Then you need the best tasting protein bar ever. That's Built. You got to try it. If you're like me and you want to make healthier snack choices, but you don't want to compromise on taste or give up the chocolate, then you got to try Built Bars and Built Puffs. Built Bars are healthy and taste amazing. Seriously, they taste so amazing you won't think they're good for you. You got to try them. What makes Built Bars so good? Well, they're covered in 1% real dark chocolate. Now it's dark chocolate now. That's right, real chocolate, and they come in unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and cookies and cream. I'm really not sure how Built does it, but these bars taste like a candy bar while maintaining amazing macros, and that's even better that they're healthy. Only 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and a whopping 17 grams of protein. And now you don't need to wait to get a box from Built.com, although you can, of course, still order them at Built.com. You can now get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club, while you can still get specialty flavors at Built.com. You can even get them at Publix. I've seen their boxes over at Publix, so you can definitely get in on the Built craze today. So head to your nearest Walmart, walk to the pharmacy section, grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut puff. Or if you're close to Sam's Club, run in and grab a 13-bar box with hit flavors like brownie batter puff and churro puff. You can thank me later. All the flavors are great. They taste exactly like what they say on the box, which isn't always the case with protein bars. Check them out today at Built.com or wherever you buy your protein bars. All right, we had a full weekend of action in the NBA, a full weekend of playoff action, a lot of upsets, which really I think shows the parity in this league, and obviously injuries already a huge story. There are 2 games that I want to point out specifically from this weekend that really stood out to me. First, what a scene in Sacramento. What a scene at the Golden One Center to see the Sacramento Kings play their first playoff game in 16 years, win their first playoff game, defeating the Golden State Warriors. Just a wild scene and just a fan base that, to me, just deserves all the best things. That Sacramento fan base has been through the ringer over the last 2 decades, more than the Magic. But they've been passionate, they have been loyal, and they have showed up for their team time and time again. Again, this is a really special season for them. They're one of the great young teams, and I love what we're all our smart markets stick together. I love watching them have their moment in the sun on ABC, a primetime game that delivered all the goods and showed exactly who they are. That's going to be a really fun series. It looked like a really fun series on paper before it began. It certainly played out that way with the Kings taking every punch from the Warriors and punching right back. I think that's going to be a back and forth series. So credit to the Sacramento crew. Credit to Sacramento for showing up for their team in such a big way. The other game that I really want to point out is the Lakers-Grizzlies game. What a game from the Lakers, and what a game for them. It got me thinking a little bit, how much money is Austin Reeves going to make this offseason? Are the Lakers going to have enough money or be able to re-sign him? He's going to make more. He's restricted free agent this offseason. He's going to make more than the Lakers can offer him, can match him under the CBA rules. So they're going to have to really negotiate and make sure that they get him on a deal. He feels like a guy that would kind of fit what the Magic need. Tough-minded player, smart player, can attack off the dribble, can get to the line a little bit. We saw that plenty. Can hit the three. It kind of feels like he would fit with this team in kind of a similar role that he's playing with the Lakers today. And the Magic, again, like I said, have the money to go after someone like that if they wanted to. I'm not sure that the Magic would do that. I'm not sure if the Lakers would let him walk or if he'd be interested in leaving the Lakers. But he's played exceptionally well, and he spearheaded that 17-0 run that helped the Lakers upset the Grizzlies in the first round of their game. Just a really impressive game. Obviously, LeBron and Anthony Davis did their thing, but the Lakers won that game because Rui Hachimura had a fantastic game, fantastic shooting night. The Grizzlies were happy to let him shoot threes. He made it. Got to give him credit for that. And then Austin Reeves, he just, so unassuming, just took over that game at the end, helping spearhead that 17-0 run. There's a lot to learn from these playoffs, of course. We're going to keep watching. We're going to keep breaking some of those games down and what they mean for the Magic. But you can kind of see having solid role players, having solid bench players comes up big for you. The Heat rallied really well with Kevin Love, a great signing that really paid off in this one game. Again, you got to win 4 of these things. That makes it tough. But, you hear them all say about depth. I don't think depth is as important in the playoffs, but definitely tips you over the top if you're able to get some unexpected support from your bench. And I think that's, again, to me, the biggest need for the Magic this season. It isn't necessarily shooting. It is shooting, but it isn't necessarily shooting. It isn't necessarily backup center. It's just more reliable depth. It's, the Magic got hit with a lot of injuries, and they didn't have great depth. They didn't have consistent play off their bench. Getting more consistent play off your bench, getting more consistent guys in their roles, guys who could step into the starting lineup and still provide you something when needed. To me, that's the most important thing the Magic need to find. They just need to find more consistent depth, rely less on unproven rookies, rely less on unproven guys that are good, once every 4 or 5 games. Find guys who are going to be good every night or every other night at worst. That's really what the Magic need. So that's kind of what these playoffs are showing me. Let's do our daily lottery spin because I had an interesting scenario pop up in my spin it was for Saturday, but I published it Sunday. Let's talk about the scenario where the Chicago Bulls keep their pick. As you can see in this lottery, if you're watching on YouTube, if you're listening, Washington wins the lottery, Portland goes second, Detroit third, and Chicago fourth. Orlando sits at the 8th pick in the draft lottery. Obviously, this is just a scenario. I'm not so interested in the order of the top 4, except to say that Chicago is at 4. Now, I made this point to someone. If Chicago is going to jump into the top 4, I want them 4th. Maybe they trade that. Maybe they get a little bit better. Maybe they solidify their playoff spot a little bit. But I want them 4th. That way they don't get the 3 that everyone's got kind of as that consensus top 3. They get I don't want to say stuck with Amen or Asar Thompson because I think the Magic would very happily take one of the Thompson twins too. But you want their future to be murky. So if the Bulls are going to jump into the top 4, 4 is the place for them to be. You want their future to be murky. You want them to not be sure what direction they're going in or how everything's going to play out for them. And so on that front, this is kind of the ideal situation for this to happen. If the Bulls do go into the top 4 and do keep their pick, then the pick flips over to next year, top 3 protected. So again, my thing is I don't want the Bulls to be so bad that they have a very good chance of getting a top 3 pick. So the Magic do get those picks, do get that pick. But I also wouldn't necessarily mind flipping that, kind of pushing that pick forward to next year. That way, the Magic don't have to deal with 2 lottery picks this year, and the potential of adding 2 more rookies to a team that's already pretty young. I don't think that's necessarily the greatest thing in the world. But how does the strategy change if you're Orlando at 8? Talking to a lot of people, talking to a lot of fans, a lot of you guys, I think, say, hey, we want the Magic to get a shooter. Make sure you get Grady Dick. Make sure you get Keontae George. Make sure you get Jordan Hawkins, Jet Howard. Make sure you get one of the shooters in this draft. And I think the kind of flex that the Magic could have if they're picking twice is you could take your solid guy, you could take your best player at 6, and then maybe even take a little bit of a swing and say, like, hey, we got to get a shooter. Jordan Hawkins isn't projected to go till the teens. We're at 12. Let's just get him now. Let's just do it now and be done with it. So, I think the strategy or how you game this changes when you're at 8. If you're at 8, do you take Taylor Hendricks and just say, we'll find shooting elsewhere, or we're not going to deal with shooting in this draft? I don't think that's necessarily a bad decision either. Do you take best player available, or do you try and address a singular need? Again, I think Taylor Hendricks would address a need. Some backup wing depth I think would be very good. Again, if you could get Cam Whitmore, I think that would be very good as well. I've seen our friend Richard Stamen at Mavs Draft pitch Derek Lively. I don't think you take Derek Lively at 8. I think that's a pick you make if you got that second pick. But now you got to with 2 picks, you could say, okay, we'll take this here, we'll take this here, or if we get this here, we get this here. At 8, you got one bite at the apple. You got to make sure you get the best player you can. I'm an advocate on draft night of taking the best player available. I don't think you play around or you futz around with it. Get talent. Bring talent in. You clearly need a pathway for that player to play. You need a chance for him to get experience. But I don't think you mess around too much with, drafting so hard on need that you give up on a really talented player. Now, I like looking initially at this draft class, I am not blown away by the talent. I am not blown away to say like, oh, this guy is the guy you got to get, or this guy is the next potential star that goes in the early teens or late in the lottery or the mid lottery. I'm not seeing much of that from my initial study of this draft class. There are a lot of really solid players that have some very deep flaws that are going to come to the forefront here in the NBA, but there's still opportunity. There's still guys that could fill in. There's still plenty of guys who can certainly play at this level. So we'll see what the Magic do, and if this is a scenario that plays out, we will see what the Magic end up doing. I think you go best player available. So at 8, I am targeting, if Grady Dick's off the board, honestly, I may still have Taylor Hendricks above Grady Dick. I'm going to redo my big board in a couple weeks, but I think you go Grady Dick, you go Taylor Hendricks, you go, if Cam Whitmore's there, absolutely take Cam Whitmore at 8. You really focus and narrow yourself in on what is the best player, who's going to have the best chance to play, who's going to give you the most in whatever role you carve out for him, who can you develop. You don't worry so much about need at that point. You take care of yourself. And again, if you have 2 picks, I think you could draft need on that second pick and take a little bit of a swing. But at the end of the day, you got to worry about your own draft board. You got to worry about what you're ultimately doing. But I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. Of course, find me on Twitter at @PhilipRR_OMD. Subscribe to the podcast and Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Himalaya, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and all the fun places to download podcasts to your podcast-enabled listening device. For the latest on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. Of course, follow us there on Twitter at OMagicDaily. We want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day, whether we're your first listen, whether you're listening to us throughout the day. We truly appreciate you listening to Locked On Magic. Every day on tomorrow's show, we're going to be talking about the Magic's free throw shooting and how that has begun to change the Magic's offense. We'll get to that on tomorrow's episode, but until then, for Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic, this has been Philip Rossman-Reich. We'll see you all again next time for another episode of Locked On Magic.